The television courtroom had never seen such pure, uncontrolled fury. Police Chief Benjamin Brennan stood before Judge Judith Scheindlin, his face burning red with anger, his finger stabbing through the air like a weapon, as he shouted the words that would shatter his life forever. "I own you so." The silence that followed was crushing. Every single person in that room froze in place. The audience gasped together in shock. Bailiff Betry Hawkinsbird stepped forward without thinking, his hand moving toward the chief. But Judge Judy didn't move at all, her eyes narrowing into that infamous stare that had reduced seasoned lawyers to silence on national television. This wasn't just a defendant losing control. It was a 25-year police veteran, the acting chief of Oakwood Police Department, yelling at a decorated detective in open court. The woman he lashed out at, Detective Sarah Singania, shrank back in her seat, shaking as years of mistreatment flooded back in that single explosive moment. What followed wouldn't just destroy Chief Brennan's career in the most humiliating way imaginable. It would expose a decades-long history of corruption, abuse, and criminal behavior hidden behind his badge. Judge Judy was about to show that no level of authority, no title of power, and certainly no police chief could escape justice inside her courtroom. Chief Benjamin Brennan had walked into Judge Judy's courtroom that morning with the confidence of a man who had never been held accountable in his life. At 52, with 25 years in law enforcement, he carried himself like a commanding general inspecting soldiers. His dress uniform was flawless, his chest covered with medals, his salt and pepper haircut perfectly trimmed. He was tall, commanding, the type of presence that made young officers stand straight the moment he entered a room. For 5 years, as chief of Oakwood PD, he had ruled his department like it belonged to him, demanding loyalty and crushing anyone who questioned him. His reputation as a tough old school cop who tolerated no weakness had made him untouchable within the force. City council members avoided crossing him. The mayor openly praised his hard stance on crime. Internal affairs buried every complaint filed against him without investigation. Benjamin Brennan believed he was untouchable, and nothing in his long career had proven otherwise. When he walked into that courtroom, he looked at Judge Judy and saw just another woman he could pressure into backing down. He had no idea he was about to face the only authority figure in his life who could not be intimidated, threatened, or controlled. Across from him sat Detective Sarah Singania, and the difference between them was impossible to ignore. At 34, Sarah was the youngest detective in Oakwood PD history, promoted after just 8 years based entirely on merit. Her case closure rate was the highest in the entire state. She had solved 47 major investigations, earned multiple awards for bravery, and had become the most effective investigator in the department. But none of that mattered to Chief Brennan. To him, she was simply another woman who didn't belong in his circle. Sarah sat in the plaintiff's chair, clutching a thick file to her chest, her hands visibly shaking. Dark circles under her eyes showed months of sleepless nights. She was a single mother of 2 daughters, ages 7 and 9, and the stress of this case had pushed her to the edge. Her daughters kept asking why their mother could no longer afford school supplies, why birthday parties were cancelled, why their activities had to stop. Sarah tried to explain, but how do you tell children that the police chief is trying to destroy their mother's life? Because she refused to accept his behavior. The harassment began 3 years ago, the moment Sarah earned her detective badge. Chief Brennan called her into his office and told her that women made poor detectives, that she should request a transfer back to patrol or dispatch, where she would be more suited. When Sarah refused and proved herself by closing 3 cold cases in her first 6 months, Brennan's attitude shifted from dismissive to openly hostile. He began calling her sweetheart and honey during official meetings, making her the subject of jokes during briefings. He blocked cases from being assigned to her and gave them to less qualified male detectives. He scheduled her for the worst shifts and sent her into dangerous situations without backup. In department emails, he referred to her as a diversity hire and questioned her toughness for real police work. When Sarah filed a formal harassment complaint 6 months ago, Brennan retaliated immediately. He placed her on administrative leave, claiming she was emotionally unstable and unfit for duty. Her pay was cut by 40% during the investigation. Internal Affairs, staffed by officers loyal to Brennan, cleared him within 2 weeks, without speaking to a single witness Sarah had listed. Now she faced losing her home, her career, and her ability to care for her daughters. This lawsuit was her final attempt to find justice. The stakes could not have been higher. Sarah was suing for $87,000 in lost wages and emotional damages, money she desperately needed to survive. But Chief Brennan sat across from her with his expensive attorney, both wearing confident expressions. Brennan had never lost to a woman in his career, and he didn't intend to start now. The mayor supported him publicly. The city council backed him. Other police chiefs across the state sent letters defending him. He believed he was protected by a system that had shielded men like him for years. What he didn't know was that Judge Judy had spent the previous night reviewing every document, every complaint, every record she could access. What he didn't know was that she had uncovered truths about his past that would destroy everything. Judge Judy looked up as the bailiff announced the case. Her instincts, sharpened over decades, immediately picked up on Brennan's behavior. He didn't stand respectfully like most defendants. Instead, he leaned back casually, one hand resting on the table, as if he owned the room. When he spoke, he said "Mom" instead of "Your Honor," a small but deliberate sign of disrespect. "Good morning, Mom," he said, with a faint smile. "I appreciate your time. Once you hear the facts, you'll see this is simply someone playing victim instead of accepting responsibility for poor performance." Judge Judy raised an eyebrow slightly, but kept her tone steady. "Chief Brennan, we are here because Detective Singania has filed suit against you for harassment, retaliation, and wrongful termination. She claims you created a hostile work environment and ruined her career after she filed complaints. How do you respond?" Brennan's smile widened. "Your Honor, I run a department with over 200 officers. We deal with real danger every day. Sometimes people who aren't suited for that kind of work look for excuses. Detective Singania may be a fine person, but she is not suited for detective work. That is not harassment. That is honest evaluation." Judge Judy turned to Sarah. "Detective, explain what happened." Sarah's voice trembled at first, but her words were clear. "Your Honor, I was promoted 3 years ago based on my record. I had the highest scores in my class and multiple commendations. Within 6 months, I solved 3 cold cases that had been open for years. But from the beginning, Chief Brennan made it clear he didn't want me there." She opened her file and handed over documents. "He sent this email 2 weeks after my promotion." Judge Judy read it aloud, then looked up sharply. "Someone of your background, what does that mean, Chief Brennan?" He shifted slightly. "Your Honor, I meant her experience level. She was new." "That is not what you meant," Judge Judy said calmly. "You meant she was a woman. With respect, Mom, you are misinterpreting my words. I treat everyone equally." Sarah presented more evidence, emails, statements, evaluations. Her voice grew steadier as she spoke. Judge Judy's expression hardened as she reviewed them. One email revealed Brennan's recommendation to question Sarah's mental stability immediately after her complaint. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Judy placed the document down carefully. "So within 24 hours of her complaint, you were discussing termination and mental fitness. That is retaliation." Brennan's face flushed. "You don't understand police procedures, Your Honor." Judge Judy leaned forward. She continued questioning him, exposing contradictions in his statements. As pressure built, Brennan became defensive, then agitated. "Finally," he snapped. He stood up suddenly, his chair scraping loudly. He began shouting, defending his authority, dismissing the court. Judge Judy warned him to sit down. He ignored her. Then he turned toward Sarah, his anger fully unleashed, and shouted the words that ended everything. "I own you so." The courtroom erupted. Sarah recoiled, tears streaming down her face. Bailiff Bird stepped in immediately. Judge Judy remained still for a moment, then spoke with controlled authority. "Sit down now, or you will be made to sit down." Brennan hesitated, realizing what he had done. His lawyer tried to intervene, but it was too late. Witnesses were called. A former officer described similar abuse. Another confirmed threats and discrimination. Then Judge Judy revealed documents from Brennan's past. A prior harassment settlement. A forced resignation. An arrest tied to violence. The courtroom reacted in shock as the pattern became undeniable. Finally, financial misconduct surfaced. Thousands in improper charges. Judge Judy delivered her ruling without hesitation. She ruled in favor of Detective Sarah Singhania, awarding full damages. Her words were sharp and final. Brennan's authority meant nothing there. The gavel struck. The case was over. Within hours, the footage spread everywhere. By the end of the day, Brennan's career was finished. And Sarah, who had entered the courtroom afraid, walked out with justice, her future secured at last.